I'm wearing my Buckle Up shirt. If you're watching on our Facebook, YouTube platforms out there on the live video side of things. And, of course, we'll be chasing down the Orioles and the Red Sox, and later in the week, the Astros through the heat here and hopefully back into first place before it's all over with. Luke Jones will be spending evenings at Oriole Park at Camden Yards and mornings out on the backfields at Owings Mills. No one busier than the hardest working man in Baltimore sports media. We welcome Baltimore Luke back onto the air. You can follow his journey out at Baltimore Luke on Twitter, or, of course, email him anytime, luke@WNST.net. Luke, we're going to talk about the Red Sox this week and the Astros and certainly where the Orioles are here in the pennant race. But meanwhile, the football thing sort of churns on, and 9 days between games that, let's be quite honest, they suck. You and I spent the evening the other Thursday night for what was really sort of a yawn fest, and now this week there's going to be more practice, more hitting, hopefully less injuries, but I don't know how it could get much worse than your Saturday blog that said 23 Ravens, not on the field on Saturday after a preseason game. I don't know if I have any alarm, outrage, concern, whatever it is. It's just the fact of, middle of August preseason football right now.
It really is, and 23 is certainly. I mean, that's a big number. I bet this is my 7th training camp.
That's a whole team, dude. Right? That's 22 players that make a team, right?
Right. I mean, it's that's pretty extreme. There's no doubt about it. But I will say this: I mean, they were off on Sunday. They were less than 48 hours removed from the Thursday preseason opener. So any players that were nicked up even a little bit, might as well give them a day. Yeah, you might as well. I mean, there wasn't. There isn't enough return to forcing the issue if you have some guys who would benefit from having that extra day off. It's almost like when Buck Showalter decides to rest someone the day before they have an off day to kind of get them 2 days off.
And by the way, it's almost a mini bye, too, in the NFL vernacular, playing Thursday and Saturday, right?
It is, but at the same time, they're still in training camp mode. So I think that's a little less. That's a little less of a story.
But for veterans, for the guys who didn't
sure.
play or played very minimally, it's a time to let them breathe a little bit. No doubt about it.
It is. And of the 23 players that they were missing on Saturday, which I touched on this over the weekend at WNST.net, very few of those are because of injuries that are major long-term concerns. I mean, to this point, Bronson Kafusi is the only player who suffered a season-ending injury. But I think the interesting thing now, as we get into the middle of August, and we're now counting down to the second preseason game, for me is the timing of the guys that are still on the PUP list. We're pretty sure we're not going to see Steve Smith in the preseason. He's already said that on a number of occasions that he's not concerned about playing in the preseason, and that's fine. But, Terrell Suggs, who Sunday marked exactly 11 months since he suffered his Achilles injury, if the plan is for him to get some reps in the third preseason game, which I think will certainly be the plan for Joe Flacco if we don't see him in the second one, I think would certainly be the plan for Elvis Dumervil. Some of these guys, though, coming off PUP, you would think if they want to play in that third preseason game, you probably need to see them getting back on the practice field at some point this week, because you don't want to just throw a guy into a game setting when he's only had a couple days of practice under his belt.
It is a team sport.
Yeah. So I'm a little curious to see what the timing is. I know Harbaugh said last week that Suggs was the closest of their 5 players that are on PUP, and of course we're talking Suggs, Steve Smith, Elvis Dumervil, Brashad Perriman, and Lorenzo Taliaferro. But I think if Suggs wants to get a series or two in that third preseason game, probably thinking he'd have to be back on the field at some point this week just to start stacking practices. Same with Elvis Dumervil. They're not concerned about Dumervil not being ready for the start of the season, but, again, a guy that, you'd like to probably stack some practices if he is going to play in the preseason. I think the most interesting one at this point is Brashad Perriman. Early, going into training camp, there had been some rumblings that, he might be ready to go on the practice field by the middle of August. That wasn't definite, but that I think was kind of a goal, but we'll see about that. We haven't heard anything from him. We haven't heard much about him. So he's someone that you absolutely would like to get some time in the preseason because he's just practiced so little over the last calendar year. And think about it, the little bit of practice time that he did have in the spring, he didn't have that with Joe Flacco because he was getting his way back into full 100% shape after the knee surgery. So, you'd like to see Perriman get some practice time this summer. You'd love to see him get a little bit of preseason game action. Of course, this is all working under the assumption that he's 100%. If not, it's a moot point, and he needs to recover, and you take as long as you need for him to be healthy. But I am interested here over the next few days to see if any of these PUP list guys come back. Lorenzo Taliaferro, I've touched on this. With him being so far down on the depth chart, you wonder if the Ravens will almost take advantage of it almost being like a redshirt situation where maybe he starts the year on PUP, and then you see what your running back situation looks like in Week 7. Do you have an injury? Do you have a couple guys not doing the job, and maybe you want to try him out? So I think I wouldn't be surprised to see that scenario play out with him, but for these other guys, we're starting to get to that point where, look, I'm not trying to sound the alarm. They're still just under a month away until the season starts. So there's still some time here. There's no doubt about that. But at some point here in the near future, you do have to start talking about when these guys are going to get on the practice field, especially if you want to see some preseason action, because other than Perriman, other than Taliaferro, certainly there's other three guys you'd have no interest in them seeing the field for that terrible clunker of a fourth preseason game where you rest all your starters. So it's going to be interesting, but for right now, this is a team that's just a lot of minor injuries. Some other guys that have missed some time. Tavon Young suffered a hamstring issue, which I wrote about a little bit. Disappointing considering. Didn't really like what you saw from Gerard Powers and Kyle Arrington at the nickel spot. So missed opportunity for him, not knowing how long he's going to be out. And the other name that's been out quite a bit. Chris Moore, the rookie who, if you remember, the first couple of days we were talking about how...
There's a wow factor with him, wasn't
making some plays, but he's now missed 2 weeks of action with that foot issue that he was in a walking boot as recently as about a week ago. Haven't seen him since then to get a real sense of where he is physically, but missing lots of valuable practice time in his case. So it's not just the PUP guys, but the Ravens have had couple young guys that have missed some time or are going to miss some time. And that's something that you miss out on. But it was Saturday. It was brutal. They had, by the end of practice, a total of 9 wide receivers and tight ends. I mean, that you like to have 9 on your 53-man roster. Normally, you have upwards of a dozen guys playing those two positions in camp. But there's just a lot of guys banged up, and really made it a challenge on Saturday with the heat, just to make sure they weren't giving too many reps to the guys who were actually healthy enough to be out there.
Well, and I think getting out of Thursday night's game not in horrific shape and getting ready for this game here this week, I start to really think like the third preseason game. We always say the always important. That Lions game, you're going to see stuff there we haven't seen here in these 2 games, right? I mean, that's going to be more of a dress rehearsal look than maybe we've seen in recent years, being that, we'll see probably a little bit more Flacco, but a little bit more of what would look like base packages than would look like sort of camp thrown together packages?
Well, in the third preseason, the first 2, certainly the first one, they do maybe a touch more of it in the second one, but the third preseason game, that's your dress rehearsal. That's where you don't game plan in the same way that you do in the regular season, but you do game plan some. You will go over kind of the process, your methodology for how you prepare for an opponent. And I do think this one's going to carry a little more importance, especially if Flacco doesn't play against Indianapolis on Saturday. You would think he's going to play a lot against Detroit. And at some point, as much as you want to take care of all your players, at the same time, you do have to get ready to play football for real. So,
yeah, I don't know that it's as much about guys winning jobs at the bottom of the roster as it is, well, what the hell do we have at the top of the roster?
Correct.
That's what I want to see, right?
And that's why, and look, I get it. If these guys that are on PUP right now aren't ready to go by the third preseason game, then there's nothing you can do about it. You're not going to put them out there when they're less than 100%.
Yeah, I don't expect Steve Smith or maybe even Suggs out there for that.
Right.
But just about everybody else,
sure.
I want to see Doomerville run around a little bit, right?
Yeah, and in all honesty, I'd like to see Dennis Pitta. And look, he's going to the thought of putting him in harm's way. Remember, he got hurt the second time catching an innocuous pass and turned upfield non-contact, and his hip popped out. So I don't know if there's any thought to protecting him by not having him play in the preseason. I kind of want to see what he looks like as a football player in a live game setting at this point 2 years later. But you do want to kind of see what you have. I've talked about this a lot. I think it's clear the Ravens have upside. There's no doubt about that. But you kind of want to see what these older guys are looking like at this point, coming off of injuries, and how it's all going to fit, and how Ben Watson and Mike Wallace are going to fit into this puzzle that already includes guys like Kamar Aiken and Crockett Gilmore when he gets back on the field, and just go down the list.
Yeah, when the bullets start flying, who's really going to catch the ball?
Exactly. I mean, you can't. This isn't just the case, and the Ravens don't have this expectation either. But this isn't just the case where you roll the ball out on September 11th against Buffalo and say, well, everyone's ready to go now. Everyone's suited up. You kind of want to get a feel for what you have, and probably more importantly, what you don't have, what your weaknesses are, what you have to at least understand who you are as a football team. I mean, that's it's great to have strengths, but understanding what you don't do well is just as important, because you have to realize that when you're putting together your game plan on a weekly basis. So you have to know yourself. So that's where it's been a little bit tough to try to project, to try to figure out what to expect from this football team, because they've had old guys hurt, they've had young guys hurt. Again, no catastrophic injuries save for the Kaufusi broken ankle, but it's really tough. I mean, I've seen this team practice now for 2.5 weeks. We all saw the preseason game Thursday night, and we know that first preseason game isn't worth a whole lot. Let's call a spade a spade. But it is still a sense that I feel, the curtain still hasn't been pulled back yet exactly on what this team's going to look like. And we are getting to that point in the summer now, as I said, for some of these guys who have been on the sideline, if they want to even play in that third preseason game, probably got to be getting back to the practice field sooner than later.
He is Luke Jones. He will be on those practice fields during the mornings this week in Owings Mills as the Ravens prepare to go to Indianapolis, where they have their own unique set of problems now, don't they, Luke?
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, it's you look around this league, and it really is amazing to see what teams go through in the preseason as far as injuries or guys with suspensions. I mean, Indianapolis, look what's happened with Arthur Jones. Hasn't stayed healthy the last couple of years. Crazy. A 4-game suspension, for PEDs, on the heels of what's happened with his brother John in UFC. So clearly he's facing
been a rough couple of years since that Super Bowl weekend for him, right?
It really is, and it's a shame. I mean, honestly, he's a guy that I understood why the Ravens didn't try to keep him, but I'll be honest, I thought he was going to be a good player for them, and it just hasn't worked out. He's had serious ankle issues, and now this. But this is an Indy team that they're trying to kind of still get their bearings after last year. I mean, everyone thought that there was going to be a coaching change, and we saw how that played out in a very unusual way, quite frankly, considering the Grigson-Pagano relationship, the way that thing had eroded, at least based on everything we had heard. But that's a team that's trying to figure themselves out at this point. They severely underachieved last year. I think you look at some of their drafts, you look at some of their off-season moves the last couple of years, they've been very, very underwhelming. And it's a case where that's a winnable division. I think people like Jacksonville, but I don't think anyone's just ready to say that they're going to.
Yeah, we all like Jacksonville until they roll the ball out, right?
Well,
they better not beat us, down there third week, right? I mean, that wouldn't be a good look for the Ravens.
But my point is, that's a talented team. At least they have some young talent where you say, okay, but
there's something to brag about there, right?
Right. Do I think they're 11-5 material at this point? Probably not. I'd be surprised by that. Tennessee, they're a team that's clearly building a lot, needs to build a lot. And Houston, they made the playoffs last year, God bless, but they're not in a position where their quarterback instills confidence that they're going to be overly dangerous. So to me, Indy, I don't know if I'd say the clear favorite, but I think a lot of people view them as a team that should be in contention to win that division. But it's a very much a kind of prove it to me situation with the Colts, because they were so underwhelming last year. And look, I get it that Andrew Luck was hurt, but when he did play, he didn't play well. And I think even before some of the injuries set in. So that's an Indy team that has a lot of questions about where they are right now on the offensive and defensive line. But it's early, so there are lots of questions about everyone. And quite frankly, we probably won't find that many answers for either of these teams on Saturday night, other than just hoping you avoid those season-altering kind of injury.
Look, man, during the season, I know I'm going to talk to people all over the league and experts and insiders, as we always do here. But I want to get a little feedback from you on the first weekend, because the first weekend of preseason, there really were a few little storylines. First off, sort of Miles Jack flying around and a rookie name we'd heard so much about. Every team in the league passed on. And then the Carson Wentz story in Philadelphia. That thing gets richer every moment. And then, there's Garoppolo trying to figure his way around with New England where there's no net, right? There are some pretty good storylines in other places. Hey, I watched the Rams play out in L.A. on Saturday night. Jen and I went to Ruth's Chris for dinner. We're down at Pier 5. And, I watched all the grandeur of that L.A. Memorial Coliseum and people coming out. That's a great story and storyline for the league. Not good for St. Louis. Obviously not a good look there. But there's stuff going on in other places, in 31 other places besides Owings Mills, where, there are little stories behind the stories.
Yeah, a little bit. I'm not overly captivated with the week one of the preseason. I know you're not either. But, Carson Wentz with the ribs issue, offensive line when he was playing in that game, certainly a lot of people will question that. I know he's hoping for a quick return. You mentioned the Rams. I'll be honest. I was kind of surprised about the reports of Jeff Fisher with a new contract potential. I don't know. And look, I like Jeff Fisher for a long time, but I don't know if I'd be in a position where I'd be wanting to give him an extension at this point. But he is someone, and I heard you talking about this on the radio last week. He is someone who has experience with a franchise relocating, so maybe that's worth a little something. But,
and he has great sunglasses, perfect for LA, outdoor football.
But the preseason opener, you mentioned with Brady and Garoppolo, that's clearly something that's only going to get juicier here as we get closer to the start of the season. But that first week, you still have so many guys who don't even play. The Ravens were a perfect example of that. They didn't even suit up 20 guys on their 90-man roster. But it's that time of year where injuries are still the prevalent storyline. That's the prevalent headline of anything else. And Buffalo, as much as we're talking about the start of the regular season counting down, the Bills, who the Ravens are going to see week one, they've dealt with a slew of injuries on the defensive side of the ball. Lost another linebacker over the weekend to an ACL. So it's definitely that time of year where we're starting to talk about it. The games still aren't very captivating, but the storylines are starting to pick up in terms of interest, and only figures to get more interesting as we get into this, and at least pay attention to these games a little bit more as we get into the second preseason game, and especially the third.
He is Luke Jones. He can be reached Baltimore Luke at on Twitter, as well as Luke at WNST.net. He's got you covered for anything that happens on the backfields at Owings Mills. And, of course, he'll be up late with Oriole baseball. The Birds taking on the Red Sox and the Astros all week long. You can email me, nasty at WNST.net. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, wherever you are, YouTube, on our WNSTV channel, as well as in the audio vault. 24 hours a day. Anything you miss here is in the Buy a Toyota audio vault at WNST.net. Download, podcast, listen when you want, where you want, how you want. And, of course, each and every morning at 7 a.m., we send out that WNST morning newspaper. It's all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. Still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life there. Last but not least, any breaking news happens first on the WNST text service. That is powered up by our friends at Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis Kolatzis will be here on Thursday, driving you home and probably getting you ready for, Orioles, Astros baseball on Thursday night down at Camden Yards. Another hot week, another great week of baseball pennant race here, which we haven't had a lot of since I've owned this place in the summer of 1998. So we'll take each and every day as it comes, whether it's Rodriguez and Gallardo or Price and Tillman. We got it all covered. I'm Nestor. This is WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.